Hey, what's up, vinyl people? It's Don Wilkins back with Bow Records, and I'm back with another video. And this time we're going to be talking about the great debate about debut records. So stay with us. This is Bow Records. Hey, what's up, vinyl people? I'm Don Wilkins with Bow Records, a mobile and social media vinyl shop based out of Owensboro, Kentucky. And like I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about debut records. It's a great, fun topic that me and my friends debate about. We talk about what we think are, among the greatest debut records ever. And, we all think we know what the best is, right? Because, we all have opinions. So, one thing, that drew some attention last summer, Rolling Stone Records actually put out a top 100 of what they thought were the top 100 debut albums of all time. Of course, that drew a lot of debate because there were albums that people thought should have been on it, not on it. So I'm going to show you some records that were on it, many that weren't on it, but what I think should have been on it, and then some records out of my own collection here that you hopefully will find interesting. But I think we have to start at the beginning, because what I'm going to go do here is going to be chronological. So I'm going to start, where to me, and history also says it started with the king, right? Elvis Presley. His debut record, self-titled, from 1956. Of course, this is a 1968 pressing from RCA. He started out with Sun Records, and then signed with RCA later. And you can see that RCA orange label there from 68. So, Tutti Frutti, Blue Suede Shoes are the two main songs on here. Not my favorite Elvis songs, but if you're collecting records at all, I think you have to have a version of his debut record in your collection, just because it is the king, right? It's where it started. So next up, and also that record, according to Rolling Stone, ranked number 57 in the top 100 list. So next up, Willie Nelson's debut record, And Then I Wrote. Not the Willie Nelson we are all familiar with, right? With the bandana and the beard. A very young Willie Nelson here. And this features the song Crazy. It has the song list right on the cover. That's right there. And actually a year earlier, which is interesting, maybe crazy, that Patsy Cline actually recorded this song a year before this came out, because Willie actually wrote Crazy, and she had a big hit off of it, and so that was a big deal for him, up and coming singer songwriter there. And that's actually the UK version of his debut record that I have, the original. So and I actually got that in one of those secondhand junk stores. I sifted through, spent like an hour or so sifting through like 1,000 records, and I got near the bottom, after going through I don't know how many, like Jim Neighbor records, Perry Como records, and all these standards, then I came to Willie, and it just made it all worth it, and pretty good shape, I think I paid under $5 for it, so made that hour long or longer time that I spent there well worth it. Next up, another country debut album from 1965, Merle Haggard, Stranger. So another young Merle Haggard there, and of course not what we used not what we're used to seeing, as he became, one of the outlaw country singers. This is the mono version of this. Has the singles on it: "Sing a Sad Song," "My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers," and "Sam Hill" on it. And he would go on to actually record 66 studio albums. So kind of cool to have his first album. Next up, from 1967, The Doors, their debut album, the original pressing of this. Jim Morrison, of course. He died young, 27 years old in Paris, France. But before he died, he put out some remarkable stuff. And of course, Light My Fire is on this, and Break On Through to the Other Side on this record. Very, very nice copy on the Elektra record label. Next up, and by the way, that album was ranked 47th on that list. So, next up, Creedence Clearwater Revival. One of my all-time favorite bands from 1968, their self-titled album. And if you'll notice as we go on, a lot of these debuts self-titled. Of course, Susie Q and Put a Spell on You were the two big hits. And what is phenomenal about on Fantasy Records, what is phenomenal about CCR, they put out 7 albums in 4 years, and 1972 is it. The Fogerty brothers couldn't get along, and so they called it quits. And it's too bad, because they were just such great rock and roll band. I mean, from the 70s classic rock, you can't get much more classic rock than CCR. Just loved them. And so anytime, most people get their greatest hits, which is great. But I have, it's not hard to be a completist with their stuff, because like I said, you're only talking about 7 albums. So next up, another interesting album. Elton John's debut. This is the debut, his debut from 1969, and it is the UK pressing of this. He put this out in the US, but not until 1975. So this is considered his original debut. And I'll show you this is the label on it. So just very cool, called Empty Sky. And I just found it in a record shop. Didn't pay a whole lot for it, and it doesn't go for big money. You might be able to get it for $20 to $30 depending on condition. I think I paid around $20, $25 for it, so not bad, especially for Elton John. I mean, Elton John, iconic singer. Next up, one of my all-time favorite classic rock bands, Steely Dan's Can't Buy a Thrill, 1972. This is actually a 1980 pressing of this, and but I love Steely Dan. Of course, it has a Do It Again and Reelin' in the Years on this album, and it's on the MCA. This is on their MCA reissue label there. So, but this 1980 pressing still goes for $30 or something. I mean, it's just a great album. So if you ever have a chance, you pick that up. You won't be disappointed. Next up, also from 1972, the Eagles debut, self-titled, right? Take It Easy, Witchy Woman, Peaceful Easy Feeling. Of course, on Asylum Records, right? Next up, from 1973, and this is actually in my 1974 pressing. Leonard Skinner's Pronounced. And how you know the original album, it actually has like a little yellow logo down here on the left corner, and it will say Sounds of the South on it. And I've never come across that one. This is the earliest version I've come across from 1974. So if you ever see that, you know that's an original pressing of that album. All right, next up, none other than Kiss from 1974. This is actually a 1976 pressing of this album. And one of the interesting facts about this album is the original pressing that came out did not have Kissin' Time on it. So if you ever come across this album, check the label and make sure if it does not have Kissin' Time on it, you know you have an original pressing on your hands. Of course, this one has Kissin' Time on it. The main two original singles on that album was Strutter and Nothing to Lose, and then they put out Kissin' Time to help kind of booster the album sales, because apparently it wasn't doing so well, and apparently that putting that particular song on their Kissin' Time helped boost the sales of that album. And of course, Kiss went on to become Kiss. So next up, one of my favorite English rock bands, and I'm not talking about the Beatles, and the Beatles are one of them, but Bad Company from 1974. Yeah, so you're talking about Can't Get Enough, Ready for Love, Rock Steady, Moving On. Just a cool record. And I always like the cover of this, real simple. And when you see this, it's Bad Company's, and you see this, it's their debut album. So just a cool album. Next up, another great band led by the Wilson sisters, Heart. Their debut album, Dreamboat Annie. Love this album. Original pressing of this, still in the shrink too. I mean, it's sealed. So, you're talking about Magic Man, Crazy on You, of course, Dreamboat Annie, and then how deep it goes. All the songs on this album just phenomenal. Of course, another big hit that came off a different album, Little Queens, Barracuda. I actually have their greatest hits album. It has all those songs on it, but I came across this album, and it's hard to pass up, especially in this condition. So next up, from 1976, this album, how it did not get on that Rolling Stone debut album list is beyond me. This is Boston's self-titled. More Than a Feeling, Long Time and Peace of Mind. Epic Records. Just one of the iconic debut albums of all time. Boston from 1976. Now we're going to get into kind of a trio of just great albums. 3 great albums that came out in 1978. First one up, original pressing of Van Halen, self-titled. You Really Got Me, Running with the Devil, Jamie's Crying, Ain't Talking About Love, and On Fire. Just phenomenal. Warner Brothers record label. Just I mean, I'm a huge Van Halen fan, and of course, this is the David Lee Roth, leading the band, singing, and I have all the David Lee Roth era albums. Of course, then you get into Sammy Hagar, but um, I've never met a Van Halen record I didn't like, and that's with David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar. Um, can't say enough about Van Halen. Next up, one of my all-time favorite bands. Just a cool, subtle debut album. Dire Straits, 1978, self-titled. Another Warner Brothers record. Sultans of Swing. I mean, can't get much cooler than that song. And you know a Dire Straits, kind of like Van Halen. Whenever Eddie Van Halen, starts playing, a Van Halen song when you hear it, just like a Dire Straits song when you hear it. So this is one of my all-time favorite debut albums, and you can find this pretty regularly out in the wild. And if you do catch it, again, another one of these records that you will be highly pleased with. Next up, the Cars. This is their self-titled, Just What I Needed, my Best Friend's Girl, and Let the Good Times Roll. Rico Kasey, just a great front man. He didn't quite look, the lead singer part. He was, he knew how to write a song, knew how to put songs together. Never met a Cars album that I didn't like. So, all right, next up, a little bit of history here. From 1980, the Sugar Hill Gang. This is considered the first hip-hop rap studio album. You had the rappers on here, the trio, Big Bank Hank, just a great name, Master G, and Wonder Mike. And of course, they had the hit song on here, Rapper's Delight. It was the first hip-hop song that ever got into the top 40. I believe it got at 36 ultimately. And, it's one of these pioneer kind of records that led the way to so many other rap albums that would follow. Of course, after this, into the 80s, the hip-hop era exploded. And in the next video, you'll see some of those, a few of those records that I'm talking about. It's just a cool album and a part of history here. And that's another great thing about collecting albums is, the historical aspect of it. And so just to have this, just cool, Next up, another country album. Kind of ironic because I'm not a big country guy per se, but I also understand iconic, regardless if it's, country or rock or rap. I mean, it's hard to pass up whenever you see somebody like George Strait's debut album, Straight Country, from 1981. Had the singles on Unwound, If You're Thinking You Want a Stranger, and Down and Out. Check out how young George Strait is there. This album came out in '81, and then by 1985 he was putting out his greatest hits. It's crazy, he's still going today, and Entertainer of the Year as far as country goes, countless times, and just an iconic country singer or just artist in general. now we're going to get into kind of when we start getting into, I don't know, I've always hesitated to call this group hair metal. I think, I mean, you could classify them hair metal, glam rock maybe, but I kind of take this group and put them off to their side, even though they get lumped into the hair metal. Motley Crue. This is their debut album from '81, Too Fast for Love. Just kind of an interesting fact. This is obviously not an original pressing because they originally came out on Leather Records, Leather with a UR, not an ER. They only in 1981 they only printed 900 records or copies of this record here, and so very hard to come by. But this is actually from 1982, whenever they signed with Elektra. So this album was actually a 1982 pressing, whenever they signed with Elektra Records, and obviously they have from here on, their discography gets better, but still, if another one of these iconic bands, got to have the debut of. And then in a previous video I had this group in there, but they were actually on the Rolling Stones 100 list with this album, ranked number 60. The Go-Go's, Beauty and the Beat, Our Lips Are Sealed, and We Got the Beat. So, if you're talking about a debut album that arguably Rolling Stone says is in the top 100 debut albums of all time, ranked at number 60, okay, I'll take it. And then you have, and I'm a little too hard on Cyndi Lauper. She's among the nominees this year for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And her album actually is ranked 87 on that list. But girls just want to have fun. I mean, just it's one of those songs that when you hear it, you can't help not just like it but love it. Of course, had another great hit on her, Time After Time, and so there's the label on that one. And of course, it's called She's Unusual. And then last but not least, I'm going to end it here in 1983, and then we'll pick back up in part 2, going through the 80s, through the 90s, and then into the 2000s for the part 2. But I thought this would be a good place to stop because this is whenever it starts getting interesting for rock music, and this is one of the bands that sort of changed it all. And I'm talking about Metallica, Kill 'Em All, from 1983. Of course, this is the 2021 pressing. It is on Fire Engine red vinyl. It's the Walmart exclusive that came out, and but I mean, you're talking about the songs on here called The Four Horsemen, Seek and Destroy, No Remorse, Metal Militia, Jump in the Fire. I mean, just in this album, Rolling Stone actually ranked 83 on their list, and of course, most people got familiar with them from their Black album. They're like 4 albums later than that one, so from 91. So that's it for part 1 of the debut albums. Talk about them with your friends and kind of debate, and feel free, leave me some comments about your thoughts on debut records. maybe ones that you think people should know about, overlooked. Of course, I can only show the ones that I actually have in my collection. Um, but I tried to think of some of the best ones that I had in my collection, and that would go along with some of the Rolling Stone picks. And I hope you enjoyed just seeing those. And we'll be back with part two, hopefully very shortly. And the best thing you can do right now is just subscribe, and you can click the little bell to remind you whenever I have a new episode up. And so thank you for watching. As always, I'm Don Wilkins for Bowl Records. I'm out.